moving on to the next case, Mr. Martin.
And so the next one is a set of minor text amendments to the LDR by the City of Valdosta. We went through these in much greater detail in the work session, just to hit the highlights. A lot of these are housekeeping type related things. Amendment number 1 in your packet is to section 230-9 for sign standards. This is language, as you see highlighted in yellow, that states at the discretion of the zoning administrator, this time period may be extended by written request and approval if it is deemed justified by unique circumstances pertaining to the property sign situation. This is under the category of portable signs, which is a type of temporary sign. What we've run into is, as you see in the regular regulations, is you can have a portable sign only in lieu of a freestanding sign. So if it's a new business, your freestanding sign's on order, hasn't arrived yet, this allows you a 90-day period to have signage out there temporarily. Or in the case of the past year, we've had existing freestanding signs to literally blow away. And so until the sign gets replaced, a portable sign is put up. What we've run into a couple of situations is where the replacement sign hadn't arrived yet. And so we've had to work with the property owners to do that. Something that the zoning administrator had already been doing, but we felt it a good idea to go ahead and put it in the code. So that's amendment number 1. Number 2 is a cleanup of some language for submittal deadlines. A couple of years ago, remember we implemented different submittal deadlines for our cases. And as the state sort of tightened the ropes on the advertisement requirement. One place in the LDR where we actually specified a submittal date was in this part of chapter 242, where it still specifies the 25th of the month for submittal to the rezoning and conditional use. For the past year or so, as a matter of practice, we've held that deadline as the 15th of the month. So our first reaction was to simply change the 25th to the 15th, but then recognize that we were the only ones doing that. It was only for these applications, and some of these guidelines from the state may yet change again. So we are broadening the language to simply refer to an established submittal deadline for our applications, which can vary, and it's something we can set each year. So we're simplifying the language there. Amendment number 3 has to do with dimensional standards in chapter 214. If you look at the page in your packet that is the chart, it looks like this. So under the strikeout format, we're doing really 3 things here. The first one is the middle column, which is maximum unit density per acre for multifamily. We had in here calculations for single family and other uses, which has always been a point of confusion for developers. If you have raw acreage, say 100 acres of land zoned R15, it was prescribing a unit density. That does not mean you get that many units on 100 acres. You still got to design subdivision, and the minimum lot size for R15 is what has always governed. So that was always a point of discussion and sometimes debate. So we're changing that, and it was always intended to be for apartments anyway. On the subdivision front, there's so many variables that go into how much of the land is consumed by right-of-way, and then other factors depending on the size. So a little bit misleading. So we're taking out the portions that do not pertain to multifamily. On the first column, minimum lot size, this is reflective of changes to single family attached or the conventional regs for townhouses. Not to be confused with multifamily, with conventional townhouses. LDR has specific standards for what that looks like in terms of lot dimensions. Those supplemental standards really carries the weight in terms of how that gets applied. So the table sometimes was also confusing when it referred to minimum lot size for a townhouse. That varies because the townhouse itself is on one lot. The building sometimes includes additional area. Sometimes there's open space involved too. So that equation is a lot more complicated than what this table is indicating. So what we're proposing is to take out those references to a minimum lot size per townhouse so it is not confusing, and simply let the supplemental regs govern there. And then also in the lot width, We're making changes for single-family attached townhouses. R6, when the LDR was adopted, did not allow townhouses. We amended the code several years later, added townhouses into R6, but forgot to put a lot width requirement for them in the table. So we're putting that in. Was set at 25 feet in other districts. We've had some variance requests for the 1 foot difference, and it's simply because a stick of lumber is 8 feet long. So 24 feet was the request. Zoning Board of Appeals thought that was reasonable. So for R6, we're setting the minimum width for a townhouse unit itself at 24 feet. And then RM and RP, we've reduced it to 20. Part of the difference is RM and RP are also multifamily districts, and sometimes you're looking at apartment units that are more narrow than that. So we've lowered the width for those. And then the last amendment is amendment number 4, and this has to do with supplemental regulations for apartments or multifamily. The supplemental regs used to call for pitched roof for apartments, no matter where they were located. Several years ago, we took out that rule for the commercial zoning, and we added apartments into CC zoning. But then we've run into situations with RP zoning. RP sometimes is apartment land where everything is apartments, sometimes it is professional offices, sometimes those offices are more institutional looking, box-like. And we've had actually one variance request for that requirement where RP was an office park. Within that office park, someone was proposing a 3-story apartment building, but they wanted a flat roof like the other buildings in the park. And that was a variance that was granted. So what we're doing here is taking the requirement out of RP, but we're only leaving it in RM. RM is more residential in flavor, so we felt the building should continue to carry that requirement. So a minor change with number 4. And that's all I have for amendments for this round. More amendments yet to come.
Questions for staff?
In your amendment number 4, under your RM zoning district, is it always been a minimum of 412 feet?
It used to be 412 everywhere. And it was RM, RP, and CC. All carry that. We took it out of CC, now we're taking it out of RP. And leaving it in RM.
Sir.
Matt, this question on the chart, the minimum lot width. Why did you say it was going from 25 to 20 on the single family attached?
25 is lowered to 24 in deference to lumber sizes.
He actually, I think he was talking about RM. He was talking about RM.
Yeah, RM and RP.
Yeah, RM, it was to allow a little greater density for those because you're getting into development patterns that also include multifamily. You don't have to have the parking in the townhouse style that's there, so it's just a smaller width. There's a lot more units per acre that are allowed in the RM and the RP than there would be in R6. So it's a comparison thing. If they have garages, they still have to do garages in the rear. That's probably going to dictate a little wider building, but they don't have to do that. So they can have townhouses with basically a parking lot in front of the building, which is no different than a multifamily complex.
So there'll be rear loading.
Well, if it's a garage, there's gotta be rear loading, but you don't have to have garages.
And that's gonna be in,
You've gotta have the parking. So if it's a 2-bedroom townhouse, then you've got the flexibility. When you get above the 2-bedroom, then you start looking at greater widths or having to add garages.
sure.
I have a question, Matt, about amendment 2, as far as the kind of the adjustment for the dates. Now, I understand it creates some flexibility. My question is, in you establishing the date, if it's something that's rolling, how is that being communicated to the applicants?
2 different ways. One, it is on the application form itself. So when they contact us, we give them a form. And for these very applications, a pre-application meeting is required for each and every one of them. So that is always part of the conversation with the applicant. We write down a chart of all the submittal deadlines and the public hearing dates and everything for each cycle. That is a handout gift that we give to the applicant, and we go over those dates with them. So they get it two different ways.
All right. Anyone will entertain a motion? Do we vote on that, Matt? Or-
On the, yeah, the recommendation is for approval
Okay,
as submitted.
Mr. Chairman, on the, I believe it's 4 text amendment changes we have set forth on VA-2025-06, I'm making a motion to approve the amendments as they're stated.
Second, sir.
I think Ron was first.
I would say.
Sorry, this is a public hearing. Oh, do we need a public hearing on this also?
Yeah.
Okay, is there anyone that would like to speak in favor of these text amendments? Is there anyone? Thank you. Is there anyone that would like to speak against these text amendments? All right,
Mr. Chairman, my motion stands.
your motion, Mr. Bailey stands, Mr. Blackwood stands, and all in favor? That's unanimous.